ever look back and wish Game Freak would have done something different? And I don't mean different like, oh, I wish the Kalos decks had been bigger, or I wish they had actually made Pokemon Z instead of leaving so many questions unanswered and stuffing a Zygarde side mission into Sun and Moon. No, I'm thinking more like mechanics, like Mega Evolution, for example. If you saw my video on that, you know that I'm not a big fan. I would have preferred for Pokemon that aren't the last stage on a 3-stage line to get actual proper evolutions. And I think many of the existing Mega designs would have worked as actual evolutions, like Mawile, Medicham, Banette, and some that aren't that far off, like Gyarados, Houndoom, or Lopunny. And you know, if they changed a few things about how that world works, it wouldn't be unprecedented. They changed how Feebas evolves into Milotic, so why not? Speaking of evolutions, I've got a few methods I would like to see them change. The Moss Rock and the Leaf Stone, and the Ice Rock and the Ice Stone should be interchangeable. I find it very strange that they have two separate things that have basically the same role and the same function, evolving Pokemon, but they just affect different Pokemon. And then if they made them interchangeable, they wouldn't have to worry about fitting a Moss Rock and an Ice Rock into every single game that has Pokemon with those evolutions. It's just an item. And if they were the same, and Leafeon could evolve with a Leaf Stone, and Glaceon could evolve with an Ice Stone, it would also help to standardize the evolution methods of Eevee. Because I think it would make sense for Eevee to just always evolve with a stone, or at least any consistent method, but the stones came first. In Gen 1, Eevee was a stone evolution Pokemon. They could use the Moonstone for Umbreon, the Sunstone for Espeon, and the Shiny Stone for Sylveon. In almost every case, those stones came before or at the same time as those evolutions, so why not? Why change it? Glaceon and the Ice Stone were the exception, but now that both exist, they could change it. And speaking of Sylveon, if not the Shiny Stone, then at least make it Friendship. The affection that you get from Pokemon Amie or Pokemon Refresh should just be the same stat as Friendship. Again, we have two separate mechanics with pretty much exactly the same role, showing your connection to your Pokemon. Pokemon Amie or Pokemon Refresh could just be a way of helping to increase friendship. And then Sylveon could evolve with max friendship, just like Espeon and Umbreon, plus a fairy move. And the benefits that you get from max affection, like a Pokemon enduring a hit because it just loves you so damn much, well, that would make sense as a benefit of max friendship as well. And while we're at it, let's make it so that some NPCs can get those benefits as well. Because it does kind of take away from the merit of winning a really tough battle. Like I had a battle against Guzma where I won, but my Pokemon endured like 2 hits and healed a status and did a critical hit. And, you know, nice that I won, but it didn't really seem fair. So if at least some NPCs get access to those benefits as well, and, you know, they could be part of the lore that they are just really good to their Pokemon, at least it would help to level the playing field a bit. Something that has never made sense to me is needing incense to breed baby Pokemon. They weren't a thing at first in Generation 2, so why is it that baby Pokemon introduced later need incense? And I kinda get it, because in Generation 2, if you bred 2 Meryl, you would get a Meryl. So in Generation 3, they needed some kind of reason to explain that. Like, oh, why didn't I get an Azurill before? Ah, you were missing the incense. It's the same kind of reason that every new evolution to an existing Pokemon is with a novel method, like the Electorizer for Electivire or the Dawnstone for Gallade. But how are incenses supposed to work anyway? Like the Pokemon gets more relaxed, so it lays an egg of a weaker version of itself? I think we've gone far enough into the franchise at this point that they could just drop incenses and probably nobody would care. And then again, you don't have to worry about including those items into every single game that has Pokemon with those incenses.
I bet incense works the same way as TMs do.
Which is what? On the topic of breeding, they should really make egg groups explicit in the games. The core series has never had anything about egg groups in it, not their names or which Pokemon belongs to which groups. The closest thing we got, I think, was in Earl's Academy in Pokemon Stadium 2. But making it explicit would not only make breeding a little bit easier for novice breeders, novice trainers, But it would also help add a little bit to the lore if the egg groups got proper names, because, Water 1, Water 2, and Water 3 don't really tell you anything. That idea, making the egg groups explicit, actually came from my community Discord. I pulled to them for ideas, and there are a couple more I want to mention. One is that TMs could be single use again, but only until you complete the main game. In my video about Pokemon being too easy, I talked a lot about resource management. Resource management was a huge thing in the early games of Pokemon. You had to choose which items to carry, which Pokemon to cripple by teaching an HM to, and of course who to teach your TMs to since they were single use. All of those things are out of the game now, which of course is very convenient, but also makes the games easier. Making TMs single use again would help bring some of that back. But then if you unlock unlimited uses in the post-game, then you don't also restrict team building for competitive purposes or something. The other idea I wanted to mention from the Discord is that the flying type should not be immune to ground type. It could be resistant, but not every flying type Pokemon can actually fly, like Dodrio, for example. Although it can learn fly, so how does that... You know what? Whatever. The point is, Dodrio should not be immune to Earthquake. Instead, Pokemon would have a property of being airborne, yes or no, and moves would have a property of targeting grounded opponents, airborne opponents, or both. So that way you can hit Dodrio with an Earthquake, or even a Swellow with a Mud Shot. But Surf wouldn't hit a Talonflame because Surf happens at ground level. This is kind of like the sound-based or makes contact properties that moves already have, and in a way we already had this property in X and Y for Sky Battles. There were some Pokemon and some moves that you couldn't use for Sky Battles. Even some Flying-type Pokemon were banned, like Pidgey for example, because it was depicted its model was grounded. And with this property, you negate the need for the ability Levitate, so you can give Levitate Pokemon more interesting abilities, like for example, Flygon could get Sandstream to match its Dex entries. How about you? What established mechanics would you like to see them change or retcon? Let me know in the comments. Special thank you to Ethan and Charon, who shared some great ideas in the Discord. If you also want to join my private server and help me out with ideas for videos like this, you can support me on Patreon or subscribe to me on Twitch. I'm Umbreon Libris. I'll see you in the next chapter.
Do dual flies the same way TMs work?
No!